Turning back to Brittany, I admired her confident smile. She looked ready for a fun night. "Is this all right?" she asked playfully. "More than all right, Brittany." "More than all right," I replied, taking her hand. "Let's go see what comes next." We walked back inside, making our way straight to the dance floor. A faster song was playing now, but it was still easy to groove to. Gail and G were out there too, and when Gail caught my eye, she broke into a big smile. G just gave me a thumbs up. After dancing for about 10 minutes, I glanced to my left and spotted the brown-haired girl, Mary, and her tall blonde friend. Mary faced me while her date turned away. Our eyes locked, and I could tell she had already seen me. I quickly glanced away, pulling Brittany close and giving her a light kiss. Brittany smiled happily, and a few people nearby turned to look at us. When I looked back at Mary, she was still watching, her expression inscrutable. Her date shot me a not-so-friendly glare, but I brushed it off. The night was young, and I was determined to enjoy every moment. I noticed Mary watching as Simon and I shared a brief hug before he pulled away. Her gaze lingered on him, and there was something in her expression that seemed to say, "This doesn't bother me," almost as if she was trying to prove a point. I decided to ignore her and turned my attention back to Brittany, who was still dancing, her laughter infectious. We stayed on the dance floor for another 10 minutes, lost in the rhythm, before making our way back to the table where the rest of our friends had gathered. Gail reached out to Brittany with a warm smile, clearly delighted to see her. "Brittany. It's been ages. What brings you here tonight?" Brittany's face lit up with joy. "I got a fun invitation to see how others party. This place is new to me, and I'm having a blast. It's exciting." "I heard you used to date Hugh," Gail continued, mischief dancing in her eyes. "Yes, we had some fun," Brittany replied, her smile widening. "Until he decided I was too dull for him. He has high standards." A voice called from another table, followed by laughter, and Gail, after glancing at her drink, stood up. "I've had too much to drink. I need a break. Chauvin, come with me. Let's chat for a bit." Brittany turned to me, planting a friendly kiss on my cheek. "Now don't vanish while I'm gone." Then, the three of them drifted away, leaving the guys and me at the table. Bobby leaned back, a relaxed smile on his face. "Life is good, isn't it?" "Yeah, it is," I agreed, though a part of me felt an unsettling shift. "Sometimes I think so. Then again." "Don't overthink it," G chimed in playfully, nudging Percy. They held hands, a comforting gesture amidst the night's chaotic energy, though I could tell Percy viewed life differently. "Life's short, my friend," he said, leaning forward. "You're here one moment, and then it's over. Just enjoy what you have while you can." I glanced around the room and caught sight of Mary. She had entered quietly, her presence commanding the space without saying a word. I turned back to the table, hoping she wouldn't approach, but I could feel her gaze piercing through me. "Hello, Mary," Percy said, recognizing her. Bobby straightened, offering a cool nod. They had known her for nearly 20 years. I turned to face her fully. "What are you doing here?" Mary's expression was blank, her features revealing little emotion. "I'm 29, not that it's any of your concern." "What are you doing here?" "The last I checked, it's a free country," I shot back, my tone sharper than I intended. "Are you going to tell me where I can get a drink and dance?" "You can go wherever you want for drinks and dancing," she retorted. "But I have a pretty good guess about what you and your friend will end up doing. You were almost on the dance floor already. Why are you back in Jacksonville, then?" I pressed, frustration bubbling up. "I thought you wanted to stay away from your old haunts." "I'm probably going to do what you're doing," she replied with a hint of sarcasm. "At least I'll be doing it with someone more mature." She glanced at Bobby and Percy, and I could sense a twinge of shyness in her demeanor. "For your information, I'm back in Jacksonville because this is my home," she continued, her voice firm. "I've lived here for almost 35 years. My friends are here, and I know the people at McDaniels and around Jacksonville. I'm tired of being away. Well, don't let me stop you, Mary. Welcome back, I said, trying to maintain my composure. But don't expect any gifts from me. And as for Brittany, I added, letting the words hang in the air, that blonde has grown up and knows how to stand out. Oh, I'm sure she's lovely, Mary replied coolly. I'm just curious why she's with you. I felt her words linger like a bitter taste in my mouth, and I could see concern flash across Bobby and Percy's faces. G didn't fully understand the tension, but they did. I pushed away from the table, rising to my feet. I'm leaving now, Mary. You've turned a nice night into something else, just like you changed our marriage and my life. Please don't say another word before I go, I warned, because I might say something I regret. I stepped outside into the cold November air, my mind racing. I didn't notice the faces I passed or the lively chatter around me. It felt as if Mary had stabbed me right in the chest with her words, and I was left reeling from the impact. I leaned against the glass front of O'Brien's, gasping for air, trying to calm the storm within me. In just a few sentences, she had unearthed all the pain and doubt I'd carried for 2 years. The woman who knew me best had chosen someone else, leaving me feeling like I wasn't enough. How do you respond to that? A man's sense of self often seems tied to the women in his life. When rejection hits, it's a blow to the gut. You might tell yourself their rejection doesn't matter, but it's a tough pill to swallow. You can't feel complete again until you find someone who appreciates you. I'm sorry, Hugh. Please just leave me alone, she said, her voice trembling with emotion. I didn't mean it, I replied, my anger softening. I thought it was hard when you left, but now that you're back, I wish you'd just go away again. Mary stood in my path, and I fought the urge to look away. I was trying to make you feel bad. That girl is young and beautiful, and I feel old. I'm so jealous I could scream. Mary, just go away, I said, my voice barely above a whisper. I'll leave, Hugh. I never wanted to hurt you or bring back bad memories. I don't know why I reacted like this. I knew you were with her, but seeing you two together made me feel lost in jealousy. In that moment, I was flooded with memories of our past, the laughter, the love, and even the pain. Despite everything, I felt drawn to her again. You're right, Mary. You don't have any hold over me. You made your choice, and it caused a lot of trouble for me. I would have done anything for you. Did you know that? I would have given up everything for you. Suddenly, Brittany appeared next to me, wrapping her arm around my waist. She looked at Mary, both women standing tall and fierce. Wait, you're Mary, right? Brittany said, her tone cool but curious. What did he see in you? You seem a bit out of his league, and I just don't understand what he found so special about you. Mary remained silent, staring back as people walked by, her expression unreadable. Really? How did this happen? Brittany pressed on, her voice rising slightly. He's a good guy, and even after everything, he's still good-looking. Do you know how many women would admire a man like him? Someone successful? He truly cares for you, you know. I know, Mary said softly, her guard dropping just a little. Please take care of him. He deserves the best. Then, as quickly as she had come, Brittany turned and walked away, leaving me standing there with Mary, the tension thick between us. I looked at Brittany and realized she didn't need to say anything. Her support was clear, and it was enough for now. I know you're going to go after her, I said to Mary, but I wish someone cared for me like that someday. As I started to follow Brittany back toward O'Brien's, I caught up with Mary halfway down the block. Do you even have a car here? I asked, a hint of disbelief in my voice. Weren't you with that guy? Yeah, she replied, her voice subdued. I was just planning to wait until you went back in and then call Harry, the guy I'm with, for a ride home. I reached out, placing my hands on her shoulders to stop her. Mary, this isn't just about him or about us. We need to figure this out. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mix of emotions, anger, regret, and a longing that mirrored my own. In that moment, under the cold November sky, we were two lost souls trying to find our way back, both uncertain of the path ahead but knowing we couldn't turn back now. Hugh turned her around gently, noticing tears smudging her makeup. He reached into his pocket for a handkerchief and carefully dabbed at her face. "I'm sorry about what she said, Mary," he said softly. "You're not old or unattractive. You're still amazing, and you probably always will be. I just don't understand how you've managed to stay so youthful while I seem to be aging. When you looked at me at Bry's wedding, I realized that's who you were seeing, Hugh. When that blonde was there, I knew you didn't see how I've changed. I'm not ready for a retirement home, but I feel like I'm not who I used to be." She reached out, her finger brushing the side of his mouth, coming away with a hint of red. He remembered the small mark he still had there from an old scar. "That's what hurts, Hugh. Even now, you don't see me as I am. You see the girl I was in college, and you always would have if I hadn't been with Richard. I had a good husband, a great father, and I let you go. Go back inside, Hugh, with your friends. Live your life and let me go back to mine. I'll be okay. Sometimes you can't get what you want." The next day, I marched into Gail's office, bypassing the secretary entirely. "I don't believe in coincidences, Gail. You told her I was going to be here. Why?" Gail looked up at me, clearly surprised by my directness. "I thought you knew," she replied, avoiding my gaze. "She's been back for a couple of weeks now. We've chatted a few times, and I even went out to dinner with her the other night." My annoyance flared. "And you didn't think to tell me she was back in Jacksonville or that she was going to see me at O'Brien's? You want me to keep you updated on everything she does?" "It's not the same," Gail replied, crossing her arms. "You've worked for me and been my friend for more than 20 years. Mary and I have shared stories, shopped, and been friends for over 2 decades. Yes, she made mistakes in the past, and I was upset with her for a while, but she remains my friend. So why did you tell her we were going to be at O'Brien's?" "She asked me to let her know when we went out," Gail said with a knowing look. "You're not unaware, Hugh. That doesn't make sense. She found herself in a difficult situation she kept from you. She made a mistake and let her feelings get the best of her for a time. But remember, you had your own complicated feelings back then, too. Yes, I avoided the wrong choices and never stopped caring for her. But I don't think she ever stopped caring for you either." "I don't believe it," I shot back. "But even if I did, it doesn't change anything." "It changes everything," she countered. "She's trying to find a way back to you. She thought you'd see her at O'Brien's with another man, feel a bit jealous, and go up to them, giving her a chance to talk to you. It just didn't turn out that way." "What if I don't want her back?" I asked, frustration boiling inside me. "Then I guess you'll keep living the same life you've had for the past 3 years, Gail replied, her voice steady. I just stared at her, feeling the weight of her words. We had always understood each other, even when she made choices in her love life that didn't align with mine. But I remained silent. It was her life, after all. "I don't care what you do with Mary. Be her friend, but it doesn't involve me. If she listens to you, tell her I will never forget what happened. We have our kids and grandkids. I can be polite, but it will never go beyond that." The following weekend, I almost called Brittany, but something held me back. We hadn't been serious. A light connection could benefit us both. At least it would be good for me, but I couldn't bring myself to pick up the phone. What had changed? When I finally figured it out, I still didn't understand why I felt guilty. I wasn't using her. If anything, we would enjoy each other's company. I had never promised Brittany anything, so how could I be cheating her? Sorting through those feelings only made it worse. I had grown quite fond of this 29-year-old talented woman who genuinely enjoyed spending time with me. I couldn't see her as just a casual fling. Deciding to look through my little black book, a collection of names I'd gathered over the past 3 years, I found a few interesting options. Most were friends or acquaintances my age. I went on a few dates in December, but it was the last one that truly opened my eyes. She was 51, blonde, and a bit heavier than she had been years ago. She was grappling with feelings of not being enough after her ex-husband had left her for a younger woman. Yet, she had a charming personality that drew others in. She was starting to explore new parts of her life and felt a sense of freedom she had never experienced before. After our second night together, where she shared many of her emotions, she told me, "I'll always be here if you need me." One chilly December night, I lay in her bed while she leaned against me, her warmth a comforting presence. I felt a mix of excitement and confusion, sensing a shift in our relationship as we embraced. "Any hesitation I feel is not about you," I reassured her. I realized that my own challenges were the real issues. Accepting this was just the beginning, finding solutions would take time and effort. On Christmas Eve 2009, I found myself in New York, reconnecting with family. Peter and Nicole had decided to alternate Christmas celebrations, starting in New York for a couple of years due to Nicole's health. Mary was there when I walked into their condo. After hugging Nicole warmly, I felt a rush of relief seeing her in good spirits despite her health issues. I shared hugs with everyone before greeting Mary with a gentle touch on the shoulder. We enjoyed a festive meal that mixed catered food with home-cooked dishes from Marina, who had arrived early to help. The children opened a few presents with the promise of more fun to come the next morning, laughter and excitement filling the air. But amidst the holiday cheer, I couldn't shake the complicated feelings swirling inside me, wondering what the future held for me and for Mary. As the clock struck midnight, the atmosphere in the condo buzzed with a sense of closure and new beginnings. Everyone exchanged goodnights, retreating to their respective rooms. The condo had 4 bedrooms, one belonged to Austin, while the kids would share with their parents. This arrangement meant that Mary and I would have our own spaces, which felt both comforting and unsettling. I stood by the window, captivated by the New York skyline, illuminated by countless lights that flickered like stars against the night sky. The city pulsed with a vibrant energy, a stark contrast to the turmoil brewing within me. Just then, Mary joined me, her silhouette framed by the glowing backdrop. "I heard you and Gail had a talk," she said, her voice soft yet firm. I nodded, still gazing out at the city. "Yeah, it was complicated. I have mixed feelings about it." Silence enveloped us as I processed her words. I had hurt her deeply, and I understood if forgiveness seemed impossible. We might never return to what we once had, but her desire to reconnect intrigued me. "I know I hurt you, and I understand if you can't forgive me. But I want to find some way back into your life. No promises, just a wish to be part of it again," she continued, her tone hopeful yet cautious. Turning to face her, I was curious. "Why do you feel this way?" "Because I've cared for you deeply all these years," she replied, her eyes searching mine. "Even when things were tough, my feelings for you never really went away. I had hoped I could move on. I tried. Richard and I had some good times, but I never loved him the way I love you. I went out with other men, thinking one of them might help me forget, but that never happened. Eventually, I realized that no one else could ever make me feel the way you did. So I faced a choice, live alone and unhappy or try to reconnect with you." I absorbed her words, feeling a mix of emotions swirling within me. Why shouldn't I let you feel what I felt for the past 3 years? Aside from doing something terrible, there's no other way I can show how I truly feel. Her calm demeanor struck me. It was as if she believed she held the answers. "Because you're still in love with me," she stated, a hint of certainty in her voice. I thought back to the day I told her about Richard, to Bry's wedding, and that fateful night outside O'Brien's. "I knew it then," she continued. "I could tell. I can tell now." A wave of sadness washed over me as I considered the distance between us. "You're right, Mary. I am still in love with you. So much so that just the other night, I couldn't connect with anyone else because I knew you were back in town. But being in love isn't enough. A man needs pride. I can't just take what's offered, hoping it will make me happy. I can't forget that you weren't honest with me for 6 months. If you had come to me and said you liked someone else, it would have hurt, but I think I could have accepted it. At least then you would have been honest and shown me some respect instead of making me feel foolish. I could feel the weight of her gaze, and I turned away, trying to steady myself. I can only imagine what you talked about with him while I was out there thinking everything was fine. I pictured you two together while I was trying to connect with you, oblivious to the truth. The bottom line, Mary, is that I trusted you. I valued loyalty above all else. You know how important that is to me, both in my personal and work life. Yet you broke that trust. There's no place for you in my life anymore. With that, I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there, gazing out at the glittering city lights that felt so distant from our reality. New Year's Eve, Thursday, December 31st, 2009. Despite the banks being closed, Gail and her top staff gathered during the day to prepare for the upcoming year. I took the opportunity to call Nicole and Peter. They both asked about their mother and me, knowing we were back in the same city. I gave them the same response I had been using. I hadn't seen their mother since our brief encounter at O'Brien's, aside from our Thanksgiving gathering. I chose not to tell them what had transpired that night at Nicole's condo, assuming their mother had kept it to herself, too. Neither of us had called the other before or after Christmas. We merely existed in the same city, separated by unspoken words. Gail had arranged for a big room at Pelican's for a private New Year's party. A fancy car from a group hired by Gail picked me up at my place at 7 p.m., whisking me away to the venue. As I entered the party, I couldn't shake the uncertainty of whether Mary would be there, alone or with someone else. For a moment, I considered bringing someone along, maybe Brittany, who had shown interest in me. But something held me back. I felt an inexplicable connection to Brittany, but I couldn't allow it to develop further. Mary had set a standard that no one else could meet. I knew deep down that nothing good would come from pursuing a relationship with Brittany. My thoughts wandered to what Mary had confided about Elaine visiting her. I never meant for Elaine to have feelings for me. I only sought to build my confidence, to prove to myself that someone younger could find me attractive, just as I had felt years ago before Mary entered my life. Maybe it was a midlife crisis, but in the thick of it, it was hard to recognize. Being with Elaine made me feel more alive, especially when I saw her smile as I walked into her office. She helped me forget Mary, my long marriage, and the fact that I would never feel that youthful excitement again, as long as I didn't cross certain lines. But I understood this wasn't the healthiest way to cope. Maybe it was what they called confusion in middle age. In reality, it was nothing more than a series of fleeting dreams. But if Mary was right about Elaine, that was a truth I hadn't faced for years. Elaine had believed what we had was real, which was why she hadn't reached out to me after our last conversation when I told her I couldn't continue. It explained her absence at her office the next time I passed by. She had transferred to a different branch in Atlanta. I had tried not to dwell on her departure. It felt easier to forget her now that she was out of reach. After Mary shared her encounter with Elaine, I couldn't help but wonder why she had kept it from me. Deep down, I knew the answer. Some truths are easier to handle when they remain unspoken. If she didn't know what I had done or what had happened, she wouldn't have to face it. If she had confronted me, what could I have said in my defense? I'm scared of getting older, or you're not enough for me anymore. Both would have been hard for her to hear. Would she have felt the need to distance herself to protect her heart? Or would she have responded with the fairness of saying, what's fair for one is fair for the other? The thought of her seeking comfort elsewhere gnawed at me, an unsettling reminder of how fragile love can be. As the clock neared midnight, the energy in the room heightened. I took a deep breath, reminding myself that whatever happened tonight, I would face it with resolve. The past may haunt me, but the future was mine to shape. The countdown began, and as I stood among friends, I felt a flicker of hope. Perhaps this new year would bring clarity, or at the very least, a new direction in the winding path of my life. You'll never know what could have been. Could I have accepted the truth? Would the thought of it have shattered our marriage? The weight of that responsibility hung over me. I often wondered if I could have coped with the constant anxiety of questioning her loyalty every time she walked out the door. Thankfully, Gail's quiet nature had helped sustain our marriage for a solid 10 years, even after I had unknowingly put it at risk. But now, I couldn't shake the troubling thoughts and vivid images that plagued my mind. We both sensed the tension, but what could I possibly do about it? On New Year's Eve, I found myself walking into Pelicans alone, a night traditionally meant for celebration with someone special. Standing at the entrance, I scanned the crowded room, hoping to catch a glimpse of someone I recognized. My eyes landed on a few familiar faces, mainly clients and business acquaintances from all over the state. Just then, Gail appeared, wearing a stunning outfit that sparkled as if it were adorned with real jewels. She radiated confidence, and for a fleeting moment, I was struck by how beautiful she looked. It was funny, if anyone could find happiness with someone else, it should have been her. She had everything, wealth, charm, and intelligence, but still seemed to wrestle with her own inner demons. "Here by yourself, Hugh? Where's your date?" she asked, her voice a mix of curiosity and concern. "Honestly, I'm not sure. I just didn't feel like it tonight. I thought I might enjoy a couple of drinks, stay long enough to toast the new year, and then head home. I'm getting a bit too old for these loud parties," I replied, trying to keep my tone light. "That's fine. I'm here alone too. I think someone might show up later. If not, maybe we can share a moment at midnight." "I'd be happy to," she offered, a hopeful glimmer in her eyes. I mingled with the crowd, engaging in light-hearted conversations with women who seemed friendly and approachable. I talked politics and sports with husbands and boyfriends who wouldn't have been pleased if they knew my true thoughts. I danced a few times with Coffee, who was there with Greg, a young lawyer I had met ages ago at Pelicans on my first night with Brittany. During one dance, I noticed Coffee glancing at Greg. "Are you thinking about a real relationship? He seems to have liked you for a while," I said with a teasing smile. She smiled back. "He's not perfect, but he has his charm." "Why do you think he likes me?" "Just a hunch," I replied, shrugging. As the night unfolded, I picked up a glass of champagne and strolled over to Gail, who was deep in conversation with Hank Clark, the head of a local PR firm that had done excellent work for us. His tall, dark-haired wife, Patricia, stood by his side. As I approached, Patricia turned and smiled warmly at me, a gesture that brought back a flood of memories. In my wilder days, she was one of the few women I had never pursued, even though she always seemed interested. I held back, knowing that getting close could complicate things. Before I could speak to Gail, I spotted a familiar face from the past. "Hello, Hugh. You look great," Robert said, flashing a bright smile. "You're looking even better than me. What's your secret?" "Just living well, Robert. You look great too." "I hear you've done really well for yourself," I replied, genuinely impressed. Robert Sandler looked much healthier than the last time I had seen him, which was in a hospital bed. But then his gaze shifted to Gail, who was talking to Hank. I noticed her stiffen slightly, tension rippling through the air. "What are you doing here?" "You're getting careless, Gail," he said, a hint of menace in his tone. She turned to him, her expression a mix of irritation and defiance. "I thought I made it clear that I never wanted to see you again." "Still holding a grudge, I see," he shot back. "Why are you here, Robert? Hurry up before someone else stops you." He looked sharp, more put together than I remembered from his teaching days. His eyes roamed over her dress, and I could sense that Gail was uncomfortable. "It's been 6 years, Gail. I thought we could share a dance for old time's sake." "I don't want to dance or do anything else with you, Robert. You flaunted your new life enough. We have nothing to discuss, she replied firmly, her voice steady. He grinned, seemingly unfazed. Maybe I should have been more careful, but to be honest, you had a part in this too. Remember when you left me in that hospital bed because your boyfriend and his friends hurt me? Some people would hold a grudge over that, but I don't. Reaching out, he added, one last dance. I'm moving to Los Angeles soon, for work and personal reasons. With your new partner? Yes, Sydney is coming with me. She's more than just a pretty face, she's really sweet and smart. Funny enough, I think you two could have been friends in another life. No, it's not happening, Gale replied, pulling back slightly. He kept his hand outstretched, determination etched on his face. I loved you, Gale. And I know you loved me once. Come on, just one last dance for two people who almost made it. At least for your grandfather. You know he always liked me, even if he thought we wouldn't last. Gale's eyes flickered, caught in a moment of reflection. You know this is a terrible idea. We were always a bad idea, but that didn't stop us before. Finally, with a hesitant sigh, she took his hand, and they walked onto the dance floor. Hank Clark, aware of their history, watched them dance, then turned back to Patricia and took her hand. You know, those two should be together, but they probably won't be. Patricia looked at him thoughtfully. You never know, Hank. Look at us. Who would have thought sometimes people surprise us? Suddenly, I felt a presence behind me and turned to find Mary standing there. Despite the chilly evening air, she wore a light dress adorned with pretty flowers, topped off with a jacket. Hi, Mary. Hi, Hugh. Where's your date? She asked, her eyes sparkling with curiosity. I'm on my own tonight. Just planning for an early night. What about you? I replied, trying to keep my tone casual. Same here. I came to see if you might let go of the past for just one night. Maybe hold me for a moment? She suggested, her voice low and inviting. You can't really forget the past, Mary. You can learn to live with it, maybe even move on a bit, but it's always there, I said, my heart heavy with the weight of our history. Then why not try to move past it for just a few hours? After that, I won't bother you anymore, she pressed. You keep saying that, but you always come back. You don't really keep your promises, do you? I shot back, a mix of frustration and longing in my tone. Mary looked at me intently, and for a moment, I could see the remnants of a bond we once shared flickering in her gaze. Okay, so we both have our flaws, I said, trying to steady my emotions. But what good will spending a night together do? It won't change anything. Do we really need a reason to want to hold someone? She replied, her arms opening wide as an invitation. We embraced, and in that moment, it felt like time itself vanished. We were still tangled in our dance when Robert Sandler approached us, prompting us to stop. Robert was someone Mary and I both knew well from better days. He greeted her warmly before shaking my hand. I'm heading out now, Hugh. I thought I might stick around for a few days, but it seems there's no point. I might catch a last-minute flight tonight or tomorrow. Sydney has already left. Good luck, Robert. I wish you the best, I said, watching as he glanced back at Gale. I don't need to ask, but please take care of her. Of course, Robert replied before walking away. Gale turned her back and walked in the opposite direction. Mary and I danced all night, never stopping except for quick breaks to grab drinks or use the restroom. No one else approached her to dance, and truthfully, I wouldn't have let her go if they had. If this was our only night together, I wanted to create memories worth holding on to. As midnight approached, I felt the anticipation hanging in the air. You know the time is getting close, I said, looking into her eyes. Do you think you can do it? It's just a kiss. Maybe, but it makes me nervous, she confessed. A big strong guy like you feeling scared? She teased. No one has hurt me like you did, I said, my voice softer. I've been dealing with that for a long time. I know. That's why I disappeared for 2 years. Why did you leave, Mary? That's what I've never understood. I thought we were happy. Was it to get back at me for Elaine and the others? At this, she looked up, tears welling in her eyes. Not now, Hugh. Just let me have this night. If you really want to know, I'll share everything. Then the lights dimmed, and the DJ began to count down. 15. 14. 13. Finally, he shouted, Happy New Year. In an instant, she was in my arms. It felt like we were trying to connect deeply, and it was the best feeling I had ever experienced, yet somehow the hardest. She pulled back slightly, looking into my eyes. Happy New Year, Hugh, my love. I wanted to say something profound, but then I noticed Gail standing alone in the crowd. Don't go away, Mary. I've made another promise. I walked over to Gail, who had an open bottle of champagne and was taking a long sip. Can I get a friendly hug? You promised. You have a girlfriend, Hugh. You don't need to do this, she replied. You're my friend, Gail. I want to start the new year positively. She hugged me briefly. Happy New Year, Hugh. It will never be the same again. Go back to Mary, she said, pulling away. I'm going to look for someone interesting to talk to. When I returned to Mary, she leaned against me. I feel so sorry for her. She still loves him, she said softly. I know. Now, where were we? I asked, wrapping my arms around her. For a few moments, we enjoyed being close together, but as the clock struck 1, people began to leave, although the party continued for some. What now? Could we go back to your place? Your cozy apartment? She suggested. I'm not sure there's any point or if I can even manage it. She nudged me with her hip playfully. Then what's that? I should have said, hold it together, but instead, I blurted, I've been having some issues lately. Now I feel really bad. Was that my fault? It must not have been a big problem, or she wouldn't have cared so much about you. She had a crush on you, didn't she? You're mistaken. Oh, it wasn't just a schoolgirl crush. She seemed really into you. Anyway, it wasn't an issue with her, so I didn't ruin everything for you. You came pretty close, Mary, and you upset us. She stepped back, holding my gaze steadily. Take me back to your place, and I'll answer your questions. I don't know if you'll want to hear them afterward, but I'll answer. I wasn't sure I truly wanted those answers, but something deep inside compelled me to know. It felt as if we were stepping into my apartment in Gainesville for the first time almost 40 years ago. I held the door open for her, and she glanced around the small one-bedroom condo, taking in the kitchen area, the bathroom, and the balcony. She watched me quietly, and I couldn't help but say, not exactly our dream home, is it? But it's all I need right now. She reached out, taking my hand. Where's your bedroom? I really don't know if I want to go that far, Mary. What's the point of this? Can we just sit on the bed and talk? I took her hand and led her to the bedroom filled with memories. It felt as if we were shy college students again. We sat together, and as we talked, memories flooded back to me. Suddenly, I imagined the ghost of Richard Kelly sitting across from her, smiling at her while she looked back at him with warmth. I pulled my hand away and stood up. I can't do this, Mary. I can't. She pulled me back down with surprising strength, and I stumbled. Her hand reached for me, and a wave of emotions hit me. Don't think about him, Hugh. He's not here. We are, she said, determination and passion blending in her voice. I'm here with you now. She whispered something, but I wasn't really paying attention. I was lost in the moment, even though I knew I shouldn't be. I let myself get carried away, not considering what might happen next. After a while, I lay back, trying to catch my breath. She moved beside me, looking at me with a small smile that reminded me of the old days. Things were different then, I said, trying to create some space between us. Oh, come on. You were interested. I took a deep breath and shifted away from her, trying to clear my mind. Thank you, Mary. That was nice, but it doesn't change anything. She turned toward me, placing her hand gently on my face. I said I'd answer your questions, Hugh. Even if you never want to see me again, I'll tell you the truth. What do you want to know? I looked into her eyes, feeling as if the Mary the first once knew was here, at least for now. Was it because of what I did? Was it revenge for Elaine and the others? No, she said softly, leaning closer. She gave me a light kiss on the cheek. I knew about you before Elaine. People noticed you. You weren't as careful as you thought. I had my own money, so when I heard rumors, I made decisions. As we sat there, I realized that the night was about so much more than just us. It was about the memories, the choices we made, and the roads we took to get here. The past may haunt us, but it also shapes who we are now. And tonight, under the soft glow of the moonlight streaming through the window, we were given a chance to face it together. I had hired someone to dig up the truth. I knew about everything, the waitress, Elaine, and the woman from Channel 4. When she smiled softly at me, I felt a mix of anger and absurdity wash over me. It was almost funny, really, like being warned not to cross a street but standing right at the edge, teetering without the courage to step into the road. In some twisted way, it made me feel brave. She shook her head lightly, almost in disbelief at my attempt to find humor in our situation. You're supposed to feel bad that I cared so much about you when I could have chosen anyone else. I'm not naive, I replied, my tone sharper than I intended. Over the years, Gail and others at the bank had shared their stories about advances women made toward me. I had always understood, deep down, that she was never going to take that final step toward me. It was just a matter of waiting until my middle-aged challenges passed, and they finally did. Then why? She asked, propping herself up on one elbow to look at me, her eyes sparkling in the soft light from the street lamps outside. Because I made choices that went against your love and our 36 years of marriage, I said, my voice growing heavy with emotion. It's more complicated than that, but that's at the heart of it. That's why I couldn't face you. But many men were interested in you over the years, she countered. Why did you give up everything for him? Her gaze dropped, and I recalled how Peter had mentioned she spent time with him and Richard Kelly. What could have drawn her to someone like him? He was different, she finally said, almost defensively. Oh, no, I replied, my voice laced with skepticism. You're not going to say it was just physical attraction, are you? A strange smile flickered across her face, and I felt something freeze inside me. That was it. He had something I could never match. No, he wasn't remarkable in that way. He was about your size, actually. Then what was it? I pressed, searching her face for answers. She looked deeply into my eyes. He reminded me of you. I stared, trying to process her words. Do you remember when we met at UF? Of course, she replied, her voice softening. And you know about David, my fiancé? We were together for 3 years, and it was expected that we would marry as soon as he graduated. We even considered doing it sooner if we couldn't stand being apart that long. I cared for him, at least, I thought I did. But then I met you. She traced her finger gently over my lips, and I felt a wave of nostalgia crash over me. I knew your intentions. Girls aren't that naive. You wanted to be my friend and spend time together. I knew you liked me, but I wasn't worried. I wanted David. You were no threat. I appreciated you. You made me laugh and were genuinely kind. You took me to movies, bought pizza, and kept me company on Friday nights when David was busy. I soon realized that, unlike many guys, you weren't going to rush things to get my attention. You were safe. That's the word, she said, licking her lips as she wiped a small smudge from her mouth. But I underestimated you. You got through my walls. You kept trying, and little by little, I started wishing for a closer bond with you. You never gave up, you never got discouraged. I saw that you were persistent and determined. She leaned in, gently touching my face. You might not understand how affirming it is to feel wanted by someone. I could see that you truly wanted me and that you wouldn't stop unless I pushed you away. I should have, but by then it felt too late. I didn't want you to stop trying. She pulled away slightly, and I noticed tears welling in her eyes. That's what Richard did, Hugh. He pursued me and never gave up. He was funny and charming, and even when I tried to keep my distance, he kept coming back. Mary wiped the tears from her cheeks, and I felt my heart tighten. I have no excuse, Hugh. I was single when I let you into my life. I was happily married when Richard came along. I made him work for my attention, but I could have put a stop to it. I knew I should have. He was younger and charming, and by the time I realized I was in too deep, I knew I had made a mistake. We stared at each other for what felt like an eternity, caught in the tension of unspoken words. Finally, she broke the silence. I told you that you might not want me back after I told you everything. So you did have feelings for him, I said quietly. Even though you told Peter and Mar that you weren't in love, you really were. She shook her head vigorously. No, you are the only man I have ever truly cared for. My feelings for him were just a brief attraction. I never saw a future with him. I would never have left you. I knew that the moment I allowed that to happen, it could spell the end for us. I thought you would feel it when I returned and that you would be hurt, but somehow, you weren't. So we met again, and I began to convince myself that I could manage both. I knew it wasn't right, but I wanted him in my life too much. Her fingers grazed my cheek, her touch gentle as if she feared I would pull away. I know this hurts you, Hugh, but there's no point in hiding the truth now. The connection was strong. We had moments that felt exciting, and I didn't want to give that up. I could hardly breathe as she held my face in her hands, forcing me to look into her eyes. In that moment, a rush of mixed emotions flooded through me. She had promised to be honest, no matter how hard it was, but I hadn't realized that honesty could hurt this much. Do you remember I said he reminded me of you? He didn't do anything different from what you had done years ago. Remember how full of energy you were when we first got together? When I was with Richard, I felt young again, as if I had turned back time. I was younger than I had been in a long while. There was a difference, I thought, but what mattered was how I felt then. Life had dealt us both a tough hand. I didn't like it, but I understood it. So why did you go to him, and why did you leave him? I asked, desperation creeping into my voice. I went to him because I saw how you looked at me the day you confronted me, she said, her expression serious. I knew you wouldn't take me back if I hadn't left. I felt like you would have found a way to end things anyway. I knew you better than you knew yourself. As I said, I couldn't stand the thought of you being upset with me for too long. She took a deep breath, and I could see the weight of her words settling between us, heavy with unspoken regret and longing. Maybe I should have let you go, I whispered, my voice trembling with uncertainty. No, she replied, her tone firm yet gentle. We both made choices that led us here, and while it's painful to face, it's also a chance to understand what we've built and what we might still have. We owe it to ourselves to be honest, even if it hurts. And in that moment, beneath the weight of our shared past, I realized that we were at a crossroads, a place where truth could either tear us apart or bind us together in a new understanding. The path ahead was unclear, but for the first time in a long time, I felt the flicker of hope. She nestled her head against my chest, her voice trembling slightly as she spoke. Richard thought we could start a new life together. I don't think he truly loved me. He still had feelings for his wife but made a promise to us, putting both his job and marriage at risk. I knew we wouldn't last long, but I had nowhere else to go. I couldn't face the kids and tell them I'd gone against their father. It would have cost me everything. I remembered how upset Richard had been when Peter visited me that day. He wanted to prove to me that I was with him and not with you anymore. When we were alone, I felt too shy to share my feelings. I told him that we had no future together. He made things uncomfortable in front of my son. He tried to convince me to stay for a few more months, but deep down, I knew it was time to end things. She sat up in bed, the weight of her words hanging in the air. That's everything, Hugh. I thought you might not want me anymore once you knew the truth. You might even dislike me more now, but you deserve to know. She got up, turned on the light, and began to dress. As she took out her phone to call a cab, she stood at the bedroom door, her silhouette outlined by the moonlight. I'm so sorry, Hugh. I can't express how truly sorry I am, but I promised I would leave you alone, and I will keep that promise. Goodbye. I lay there in the moonlight for what felt like an eternity, the silence heavy with unspoken words. A week and a half later, I found myself standing in the lobby of the McDaniels corporate office. I approached the receptionist and asked if Miss Meadows was available. It was 11:30 a.m., and she gave me a curious look. I'm sorry, but we don't have a Miss Meadows here. She would have transferred from your San Francisco office a few months ago. After a few minutes of searching on her computer, she picked up the phone. Nancy, do we have a Meadows working here? This gentleman says she would have been a recent transfer. A moment later, she returned to me, her expression apologetic. I'm sorry, sir. Are you sure she transferred here? I must have been mistaken. She moves around a lot. Who knows where she is now? Right behind you, I said, turning just in time to see Mary enter the lobby. I just assumed you disappeared again. I'm done running, she replied with a determined look. Then why is there no record of you here? Because Mary Meadows doesn't work here anymore. It's Mary Davidson now. I thought Mary Davidson was gone, I said, surprised. This is the name I've always gone by here. It's my name unless you have an issue with it. No, no issue, I replied, trying to brush it off. Why are you here? I didn't expect to see you again. I got hungry, she said, her expression softening. It's close to lunchtime. I thought I'd grab a bite at Benny's. Maybe some steak tips and rice. Would you like to join me? Just dinner, huh? Unless they let you add something extra to your meal. I seem to remember they were pretty flexible about that. I have work to finish, she said, but the glimmer in her eyes suggested she was considering it. All right, another time then, but nothing I can't wrap up this afternoon. Stella, tell Miriam I'm taking a long lunch. Stella raised an eyebrow but nodded. I will, Mrs. Davidson. Enjoy. The next evening, we went to a formal dinner at Benny's with Percy, his partner Bobby, and Sean. The four of them exchanged many knowing glances, but the night went fairly smoothly. After dinner, I dropped Mary off at her apartment. Thank you, Hugh. It was my pleasure, she said with a warm smile. I didn't say goodnight, I just watched her walk away, feeling a mix of emotions swirl inside me. A few days later, she came to my office on a Tuesday afternoon. I glanced at my watch and said, it's too late for lunch and too early for dinner. She handed me a sealed envelope. You never asked that night. I know we've both been with others. I hadn't been with anyone in almost a year before that night. I want you to know I've been getting tested regularly. If there was anything serious, it would have shown up by now. The proof is in this envelope. Then she asked, have you been tested? I've tried to be careful. I used protection most of the time, but I knew there was some risk. I've had myself tested every 3 months, and everything looks good. We exchanged looks, and I felt an unexpected urge to laugh. It was amusing, in a way, that two people nearing their golden years were acting like teenagers worried about testing. Our world had changed so much. Are you going to keep getting tested? She asked. No, I don't plan on being with anyone else. It's fun but a bit sad. I think I'll start knitting instead. When I didn't respond, she just looked at me. You? It's fun, but I've lost interest. I think I'll just find something enjoyable to watch. With that, she turned and walked away, leaving me to ponder my feelings. In late January, we went with Bobby and Chauvin to see a Broadway show, then headed to a club for drinks and dancing. It was nearly 2 a.m. when I walked her back to my place. It's so late, and I'm exhausted, Hugh. Can I rest at your place? I promise it won't be a bother. Is that a promise you can keep? I teased, half smiling. I think you can manage if I try, she replied, returning my smile. The next morning, I found her waking up in my arms. What are you doing? She asked, her voice sleep-laden. Just watching you, I admitted softly. After a moment, she rested her head on my lap. Would you throw me out of bed if I got too comfortable? Only one way to find out, I said playfully. I didn't throw her out of bed. We kept seeing each other, dating in a way that felt natural without putting a label on it. Sometimes she stayed over, other times, she didn't. Occasionally, I got questions from Gail or other friends, but I brushed them off. We were married for 36 years, why shouldn't we go out for drinks or lunch? One Tuesday in early March, she came to my door at 7 p.m. The sky was dark, and the streetlights flickered as she rang the doorbell repeatedly before I finally opened the door. Hugh, I thought we were. She started, her eyes wide with confusion. I stared at her, my mind racing. I thought I could handle this, but I was wrong. I closed the door behind me and sank into the couch, trying to calm my thoughts. The next day, she visited my office just before we closed. She stepped inside before my secretary could say anything, and I just stared at her. I didn't think you'd let me in if I came here, she said softly. What happened? We both looked at each other for a long moment, the tension thick in the air. I had a dream, I finally admitted. I was watching you with someone else. It felt so real, like I was there. I thought I could move on, thought it was behind me, but it's not. It's always there. We continued to gaze at each other, a mixture of hope and fear swirling between us, each of us trying to navigate the uncertain territory of our feelings. The past hung over us like a shadow, but I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe, just maybe, we could find our way back to each other. There are moments in life when words lose their meaning, and tonight was one of those rare occasions. I could see the pain reflected in Mary's eyes, a mirror to my own heartache, but I couldn't simply brush aside the memories of what had happened between us. Then, without another word, she turned and walked away, leaving me in a silence that echoed louder than any conversation we could have had. That evening, I craved an escape from my sadness. When I returned home, I sought solace at the bottom of a bottle. But eventually, I placed the cap back on, standing alone in my kitchen as I faced my reflection in the darkened window. I realized that drinking had never solved my problems. The pain didn't vanish, it merely retreated, waiting for me to return to clarity before it came rushing back. What was I going to do? For 3 years, I had pretended to be over Mary, masking my feelings with casual dates and fleeting romances with women both younger and older. But no matter who I met, something was always missing. Even at nearly 60, I was in good shape and had built a stable life for myself, yet that persistent emptiness lingered like a shadow. What was the point of it all? I was nearing 60, what did I still have to prove? I wouldn't become more successful or wealthier than I was now. I continued working because it provided me with a sense of purpose, a reason to rise each morning. Sure, I could retire and leave everything behind, but that risked plunging me into boredom or worse, falling back into bad habits. Golfing had never been my passion, and card games bored me to tears. How many mornings could I spend on a beach just to watch the sunrise? I could search for a kind woman to share my life with, follow the usual steps to build a life together, pretend that she made me happy, all while knowing deep down that I was just playing a role. The truth was, what I truly looked forward to was watching my children and grandchildren grow up, being a part of their lives. I yearned for that connection, That peace, whatever semblance of it a person could find through the joys and tribulations of others. Mary had always been the one I truly wanted. Others had come and gone, but it was Mary the first pictured sharing my life with. I couldn't stop caring about her, even if the idea of living together again felt out of reach. One night, I woke to the soft glow of moonlight filling my room. The full moon shone brightly through the window, illuminating the familiar figure beside me. At first, I was taken aback, but then I recognized her hair. It was unmistakable. "What are you doing here?" I asked, a mix of surprise and caution in my voice. "You know I could call the police." "You'd be surprised what Gail can do for a favor," she said with a sly smile. I raised an eyebrow, not doubting for a second what she could pull off with her connections. She shifted slightly, letting the blanket slip, and the moonlight outlined her figure in a way that sent my heart racing. "You need to go, Mary," I said gently, trying to keep my emotions in check. She turned her gaze away, and I could see a flicker of uncertainty in her eyes. "I'll get dressed." "I brought my pajamas," she replied softly. "I didn't come here for anything bad." As I sat up, unease settled over me. Normally, I would be okay sleeping next to her, but tonight felt different. "Could you ask for another move? You've changed places a lot lately. One more wouldn't be too much." "I just came back," she said, looking at me with a hint of desperation. "Is it so bad that you want me to leave and give you some space?" "Not really," I admitted, sighing. "I was just thinking that Gail has a branch office in Charlotte now. The kids are grown, and I've settled here too long. Maybe a change is what we both need. I could use a new place, new coworkers, a fresh start. Meanwhile, you might need to dive back into your past without me around." "You make it sound easy," she said, a tear slipping down her cheek. "Is there really no chance for us?" "I can't see it, Mary," I replied, trying to suppress the swell of emotions. "Please don't say that." "Hugh," she pleaded, taking my hand in hers. "I can't avoid this. I can't stay in the same city as you. It hurts too much to see you and not be with you." She pulled her hand away, resting her forehead on my lap, wrapping her arms tightly around my legs. Her tears soaked through my pants, and I felt a wave of anguish wash over me. "Please, Hugh. I know I hurt you. I may not deserve another chance, but give me one. I'll do anything. I'll keep my own place, you can see other people. Just please don't make me see it. You could check on me if you need to, just to show me there won't be anyone else." She rubbed her face against my leg softly, a gesture that tugged at my heartstrings. "I still have feelings for you, but I'll find a way to move on if you can't love me again. We don't have to get too close if that feels wrong." Her grip tightened around my legs, as if she were afraid I might vanish. "I've lived without you for 3 years, Hugh. Even when I was with other people, it felt empty. I love you deeply." Mary let go of my legs and looked up at me, her eyes pleading. "Let me stay in your life. Don't push me away. If you ever loved me, please don't let me go." We held each other's gaze, a moment suspended in time, until I tapped the pillow beside me. Hesitantly, she moved up next to me, and we both drifted off to sleep, wrapped in a fragile sense of peace. The next morning, she returned to her own place, and we didn't see each other for a couple of days. But that evening, at 7 p.m., she came back, bringing with her a chicken and onion rice casserole, my favorite. She had brought her pajamas again, and this time, she stayed the night. Over the next month, we met 2 or 3 times a week. Sometimes we went out, other times we stayed in. Unless I'd had a rough dream, we slept in the same bed, keeping things respectful but filled with unspoken tension. One Friday night, we decided to catch a movie, Shutter Island, with Leonardo DiCaprio. We went to the last showing, knowing we both had the next day off from work. I poured us some brandy while she changed into her pajamas, settling on the couch beside me. As I handed her a glass filled with dark liquid, I slipped her a manila envelope. Her eyes sparkled with curiosity as she took a sip and then set the drink aside to open it. "Is this what I think it is?" she asked, unfolding a folded paper. "I had to buy new plots next to each other in Evergreen Cemetery," I admitted, the words tasting bittersweet on my tongue. "The ones we had before? I sold them during a tough time when we were apart. I never thought I would want to be close to you again, either in this life or the next." Mary's eyes filled with tears as she processed my words. "I told you before that I would never leave you, and I will do my best to be here for you. I will always be here for you, Mary," I said, my voice steady and sincere. "Now and beyond. You're stuck with me." That night, we spent our first night together in bed in 3 years. As I held her close, I felt an overwhelming sense of calm wash over me, as if the shadows of the past were finally lifting. In that moment, surrounded by the warmth of her presence, I found a flicker of hope for our future, a future I had once thought impossible. In the quiet that followed, I realized that sometimes, love finds its way back even through the darkness. And though the path ahead would be uncertain, I was willing to walk it with her, step by step. I often find myself wishing things were like they used to be. Each morning, I wake up next to Mary, and in that sleepy haze, I can feel her warmth beside me. For a brief moment, it's as if nothing else exists, no Richard Kelly, no 3-year gap of heartache, no memories that haunt us. But then I fully wake up, and like a tidal wave, memories crash into me, reminding me that our lives can never return to what they once were. It's a moment filled with profound loss, a sharp pain in my heart that echoes the struggles we faced. But as the waves of sadness recede, I find comfort in the fact that Mary is still here beside me. She rolls over, her face relaxed and peaceful. We've had our ups and downs, but here we are, together in the year 2010. That's where our story stands for now. We are officially seniors, having just turned 60. It's hard to believe when I'm with her, time seems to slip away. The calendar may tell the truth, but as a poet once said, if we cannot stop time, at least we can try to hold it close. I check on Richard Kelly from time to time, not because I doubt Mary, trust is slowly being rebuilt, but because he nearly wrecked my life. I have no intention of changing who I am, but I can't help but wonder how things would unfold if he were to show up again. From what I can tell, he seems to have made peace with his wife. They don't have children, and I can't imagine how lonely it must feel to face your later years without children or grandchildren to share the journey with. On the brighter side, my kids are thriving. Peter is advancing in his medical career, earning a reputation that grows by the day. Marina, his sister, is a respected nurse making a real difference. And then there's Austin, he's doing great in school, a bright first grader at a well-regarded private institution. I even set up a trust fund for his college education, as long as he chooses the University of Florida. Go Gators! Nicole has had a rough time, though. She's undergone 3 surgeries in less than a year, on her left arm, her leg, and unexpectedly, her hip. They're estimating she'll need 2 more surgeries, which means it might take closer to 2 years for her to fully recover, rather than the year that Wilinski predicted. Despite the challenges, she's managing, getting around with crutches or a walker. Her publisher has allowed her to work from home, and just as Wilinski assured me, she's still the same person I've always known. She's edited 2 bestsellers since her recovery, all while working from home. As for Simon, he's still his usual self. And little Calabria? I must say, her name is growing on me. Even at such a young age, I can see that she will grow into an incredible person, just like her grandmother was long ago. I've even started the process of setting up a trust fund for her college education. Simon wanted her to go to Harvard, but I had to put my foot down, no grandchild of mine will ever attend Harvard. Yale, now that's a different story. Sometimes at work, I reflect on those 3 tumultuous years and all the people who have come in and out of my life. They say you reflect more as you age, not that I'm old, mind you. Percy is still with the same boyfriend, and they seem quite happy together. She still wins the arm wrestling contests at team building retreats, except when it comes to Bobby. Speaking of Bobby, he and Choan are now together and appear very happy, especially after Bobby celebrated their adoption of a 3-day-old baby boy, the son of a friend's daughter. Coffee has been showing up at several company events with her attorney friend, Greg. I think she's not seeing anyone else, they seem inseparable. And while it feels like eons ago for us, Mary reminds me that Coffee is at a point in her life where she might be making some significant decisions. Gail, well, she's still the same hard-working Gail. She throws herself into her job and often escapes for weekends away. She tells me she's happy, but I sometimes catch glimpses of her looking at a picture of her grandfather, rubbing her lower lip absent-mindedly. It makes me wonder, could she be thinking about Los Angeles and the man who left to start anew there? I tell myself, because I care for her like the niece she is, that she's still young and there's still hope for her happy ending. If it can happen for me, it could happen for her. But even if I wanted to help, I won't intrude, it's her life to live. In my quieter moments, I ponder what happened to the woman named Renee and the man who gave up everything to be with her during her toughest times. Is she still around? Did he ever return to his wife or job? And what about Kevin? How did he manage to move on, knowing his wife is now with another man? That man's child, Rob, would be 14 now. Raising a teenager in today's world can't be easy. I wish him all the best. I also think about that lovely redhead and her partner. I hope they're happy together. Some people you just take a liking to for no real reason, and those two were like that. I hope they remain close for many years to come. Every now and then, I see Wilinski on the news. He's still doing remarkable things in medicine and helping people. It seems he's married and divorced quickly. He's definitely a better doctor than he is a husband. He married a stunning woman and is now dating someone wealthy. I'm sure he'll be just fine. As for Brittany, it's hard to believe she's almost 30. I know I'll feel really old when that milestone arrives. I still run into her at bank events and social gatherings. She's become good friends with Gail, and whenever she sees me, she walks over with that familiar stride that brings back a flood of memories. Her smile shows she remembers those times too. Of course, Mary, being the caring spouse she is, always approaches before we can spend too much time reminiscing. She's friendly, making sure Brittany knows how things stand between us now. Now I'm back with Mary, and she leans her head against my chest. A sense of ease washes over me. The Stones sang a long time ago that sometimes you can't always get what you want. What I want, I can't have again, but if you're fortunate, sometimes you get what you need. What I have here, in this moment with Mary, is exactly what I need. I know there are those who know our story and wonder about how I could welcome her back. The answer is simple, I love her. Once upon a time, in a bustling little town filled with secrets and whispered tales, there was a story that lingered in the air, one of love, betrayal, and the tangled web of relationships. It all began with a chance meeting at a local cafe, where two people's lives would intertwine in ways they could never have imagined. Lily was a spirited young woman, full of dreams and aspirations. She had recently moved to the town, hoping to start fresh after a messy breakup. Little did she know, fate had other plans in store for her. One day, while sipping her favorite latte, she caught sight of Jack, a charming and enigmatic man who seemed to carry an aura of mystery around him. Their eyes met, and in that moment, the world around them faded away. A spark ignited, and they soon found themselves wrapped in conversation, sharing their hopes and fears as if they were old friends. Jack was everything Lily had been looking for, attentive, funny, and undeniably handsome. The chemistry between them was electric, but beneath Jack's charming exterior lay a dark secret that would soon threaten to unravel everything. As their relationship blossomed, Jack's mysterious past began to surface. Lily noticed that he would often receive late-night calls and seemed evasive about his work. Curiosity gnawed at her, but she brushed it off, too enchanted by the whirlwind romance to question anything. However, Her best friend Sarah was more skeptical. "Lily, are you sure about him? Sometimes things that seem perfect on the outside can hide a storm beneath," she cautioned. "But love has a way of clouding judgment." Lily was swept away by Jack's charm, and they spent every moment they could together. They explored the town, shared their dreams, and created memories that felt like a fairy tale. Yet, as the days turned into weeks, Lily's suspicions grew. There were unexplained absences and odd excuses that made her gut churn with unease. One fateful evening, while Jack was out, Lily decided to investigate. She stumbled upon his phone lying on the coffee table, the screen lit up with a message from an unknown number. Her heart raced as she opened it, only to find a flirtatious exchange that left her breathless. Confusion and anger swirled inside her, and she realized that her perfect world was crumbling. When Jack returned, Lily confronted him, her heart pounding with both fear and determination. "Who is she, Jack?" she demanded, holding his gaze with fierce intensity. The weight of his betrayal hung heavy in the air, and for a moment, it felt as if time had frozen. Jack's expression shifted from surprise to guilt as he struggled to find the right words. "Lily, I can explain," he stammered, but the damage was done. The love they had built together felt like shards of glass, beautiful yet painfully sharp. As tears streamed down her face, Lily realized she couldn't ignore the truth any longer. "You lied to me. Everything we had was built on a lie," she cried, her voice breaking. The foundation of their relationship was shattered, and in that moment, Lily knew she had to walk away. Devastated but resolute, she packed her things and moved out of the apartment they had shared. It was a painful decision, but deep down, she knew it was for the best. With the help of her supportive friends, Lily began to heal, learning to embrace her independence and reclaim her life. Meanwhile, Jack was left to ponder the consequences of his choices. Without Lily's warmth and laughter, the once vibrant world he had crafted felt cold and empty. He reached out to her countless times, desperate to mend what had been broken, but Lily was determined to move forward. Months passed, and slowly but surely, Lily found herself again. She pursued her passions, made new friends, and rediscovered the joy of being alone. But just when she thought she had moved on, life threw her another curveball. At a local art gallery, Lily bumped into Jack. Time seemed to stand still as their eyes locked once again. Jack approached cautiously, his expression a mix of regret and longing. "Lily, I'm so sorry for everything. I was stupid and selfish, and I lost the best thing I ever had." Her heart raced, caught between the memories of their love and the pain of betrayal. "You hurt me, Jack. I trusted you," she replied, her voice steady despite the emotions swirling within her. "I know, and I'll spend my life trying to make it up to you," he pleaded, vulnerability shining through. "I've changed. I've realized what I lost, and I can't let it slip away again." Lily hesitated, memories of laughter and love flooding back, but she also remembered the heartache. "I appreciate your honesty, but I need time. I can't just forget what happened." As they parted ways, a flicker of hope ignited within her. Could forgiveness lead to a new beginning? With time, Lily learned that healing is not linear. There would be days filled with doubt and sorrow, but each step forward brought strength. Jack, too, began to rebuild himself, working on the trust he had broken and striving to become a better person. In the end, their paths crossed again, not as lovers but as friends who had shared a beautiful chapter marred by heartbreak. They discovered that sometimes, love can lead to lessons about oneself and the importance of honesty. Their story didn't end with a fairy tale ending, but rather with a promise to continue growing, both separately and together as friends. And that, perhaps, was the most beautiful twist of all. So, if you enjoyed hearing this story and want to stay updated with our latest content, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Thanks for tuning in, and see you in the next wonderful story.